In this lathe I have
various tools and instruments, dial indicators and so forth that you need if you're going to turn or make stuff with reasonable accuracy. This contraption back here, that's another one of my brainstorms that never worked out. I wanted to cut spiral flutes on this, and I did, but all the work I went to make that thing, plus its associated parts, certainly wasn't worth it. But anyway, I've got it set up so that one turn, 300 turns here will result in one turn of the wood. And of course I've got this variable gearing set up on down here so I can vary the spiral distances, but it was fun to do. I run a chain up to here from the chuck. This is a 300-to-1 ratio, and as the chuck turns, the output then is reduced through this gearbox, and then from here to the part is another chain, and then the chuck, and then of course this, and so the workpiece would be in here, or whatever length you're using. So, but this is the chuck that I made. This chucks up into the that chuck over there, and there's a bearing out of a telephone truck boom in here, big old thrust bearing, and this turns through the gearbox and then back down, and then this turns 300 times less than this one. So this is some of the stuff I made, just trial run stuff 20 years ago or whatever. And I was able to rough it out and make different things. But I don't know, I lost interest in. Oh, I know what happened. This part here held the router, and the router burned up, so I never replaced it. This is a tool that I have used many times over the years. I bought this for $50 from my neighbor on Michael Edward Drive. Actually, I bought it from his widow. He died and left this among other tools, but this is the only thing available when I found out about it. So I bought this for $50, all these cutters, numerous cutters. They're pretty emptied over there, and that one I got hold on that. Still got the catalog. Let's see what the date is on here. 1936. I've made a lot of things with this, but boy, it's a dangerous machine. The cardinal rule of this machine is to always feed toward the direction that this thing is rotating. In other words, if it's rotating this way, you feed into it. If you feed with the tool turning away from you, that tool will grab that wood and fire it across long distance with a velocity that's absolutely frightening, and very likely to pull your hand right into the tool. So this rule is an absolute cardinal rule for using this tool. So you don't need to ask me how I know that little tidbit, but believe me, it's true. So you can cut circles with this thing. You take this thing off, and you put a starter pin in a hole here, and you can cut the inside of the circle. And I've done that; it works fine. But again, prudence and holding fixtures, and keep your fingers away from that machine, that blood-hungry tool, and everything will be all right. This is buffing and grinding stand. And my little smooth, low volume, low output grinding wheels in there. And this is my roughing stuff there, and get rid of steel quickly. And then over here is a chop saw. I use this a lot. That sure saves a lot of hacksaw blades. So I'll cut steel. That's a mess here. And I've got a welding mask. It's an automatic darkening mask. It really works nicely when I use it. This is another piece of railroad rail that Dad got. And this is my welder. This is my MIG welder, which I use 99.9% of the time. And this thick welder I bought, oh gosh, 50 years ago. And I used it some, just piddly projects. I bet there's not a dozen hours on that machine over those years. But it's really a good machine. And I've got spare oxygen and acetylene tanks underneath there. This is thickness planer. This is old too. This is, it's 70 years old or more, but it works fine. I've used this. I've made a lot of chips with this thing. The blades are in good shape. And this joiner here too is a good 70 years old. I bought these two at an auction at GE. I paid about $1,000 for the pair, but boy, they sure have been handy. This is a wood turning lathe. This is a belt sander that I mentioned before, and this is a wood turning lathe that the kids got me for Christmas one year, 40 or 50 years ago. It's a very good tool, cast iron, and it serves its purpose, but I don't use it anymore. Since I have my metal turning lathe, I have really no reason to use this. So it's been a long time since I've used it. It's got a variable speed Reeves drive on it, so I can change the speed of the spindle easily by simply turning this wheel right here. This is a contraption that I made many years ago. The basic framework is a power feeder for table saws, but the motor on it was burnt out. It's a German make, so it was laying in the scrap pile at one of the factories that I was supervising. So I fished it out of there and brought it home, and I bought a router and did some welding and made an adapter to hold this router. And so now I have a five axis, well, 6 I guess, maybe, axis milling machine. All this swings around and goes up and down, and this table moves sideways here. This wheel here cranks the table sideways, and this of course rotates. And I used an old bumper jack for this piece, and I found some steel bars and die bushings that were scrap, and I used them to ride on that rod. And these are simple pillow blocks that contain this, and I have a hole. I drilled a hole up through the shaft and into this top, and I can connect my vacuum pump to the end of this hose and hold parts on top of this rotary table. I've made a lot of things on this table. It's really a handy thing. Oh, actually it's more axes than I mentioned, because this router rotates this way, and of course it rotates in this direction. So there's a lot of motions there, and it's been a good tool. This is a little oscillating drum sander that I've made very good use of over the years. It's this drum reciprocates up and down, and it does a really nice job for radius work. And of course over here is my other cornerstone of my shop here. This is a industrial bandsaw that I bought from a
friend in Evansville, Ohio, had a tool and die shop, and this bandsaw doesn't have a power feed on it, and he wanted one with a power feed, so I bought it for him. I paid $1,500 for it about 40 years ago, but it's really a nice bandsaw. It's got its own air compressor where air blows on the saw cut right here out of this little tube, and of course the table tilts and all that, and it's got its own blade welder, and of course it's got variable speeds. So it's an industrial machine. And this little tool here is I haven't had this too long, maybe 10 years or so, but I found it to be extremely convenient for small molding work. In fact, this is a little sample right along this edge that I'm probably checking out to see that the adjustments were correct. But in any case, that's the kind of work it does. This rotary tool cuts the shapes that are ground into the tool itself. Now I've got spare bandsaw blades and saw blades hanging here. I used to use this plan a month thing. I did that on a big project I had where I made a big semi-trailer equipped with flushing and drying system on it. It was a big job, but in any case, over here is so this tool hanging here cuts spiral grooves on a round stick that you put between the centers. From the centers in here, and you turn the handle and it moves the router and cuts the spiral grooves. I've used it a few times. I've had it for, oh gosh, 20, 30 years or more. But it's a little sloppy, and you got to be careful of the backlash on it. It'll ruin your piece in a heartbeat. So since I got my metal turning lathe, I haven't used that. I've tinkered with some computers. These computers work, but they're old and I need to throw them away. But I've tried replacing resistors and so forth in them. It was not a great deal of luck. This contraption is a hodgepodge of various pieces I picked up over the years, and I've combined them into a really efficient little machine that I can drill a hole at any angle. And I usually reserve this though for small holes in clocks and so forth that don't require a large drill, although I can go up to a 1/2-inch drill in a fat chuck, but still it's not as sturdy as my other drill press, obviously. But it's got all kinds of motions on it. It's got a little table, a little mechanical table here that moves everything sideways if I need to have that done. And then I've got a dividing head here that will rotate this chuck into precision increments. And then of course this vise, and this dividing head rotates 90 degrees each direction, so I can drill at any angle that I want. And I've got marked here that 10 holes equals 90 degrees of rotation in this direction. So, and 40 holes equals 1 revolution of the table in this direction. So I can pretty well accurately duplicate the location of holes no matter what angle or rotation. It's been a really handy little tool. I had to do a lot of work on it to get it right, though. I had to make a new spindle for this chuck. The spindle was bent and I had to make a new one for that, but it's proved its worth. These are micrometers that I use on my lathe here, and these are expensive carbide tipped wood cutting tools that I use to turn on this wood, on this lathe here. And this gadget here is to cut radiuses in the faceplate that I made for the lathe, and well, just various contraptions.
This lumber that I have here is anywhere from 30 to 50 years old, and it's really pretty nice stuff for the most part. I have a lot of veneer that I got right here. I went to a seminar at Hilton Head one time, and I met another guy there from Minnesota, and he was in the veneer making business. And so we got to be friends, and we bummed around. I was there a week, and he told me, he said, if I wanted some veneer, just pay for the freight, and he'd send me a skid load. Well, I agreed to that, of course, without any question. But a month or so later, I got a pretty large pallet full of these veneers of various kinds. Oh, this stuff's expensive, and obviously I have not used anywhere near what I got. But this is very thin, very prime wood cut to 1/28 of an inch thickness, and you glue this on top of a lower valuable surface. The large clock I have in my entryway is made from a walnut burl, cut this thickness and glued on. But he didn't send me any walnut burl. I bought that from a company. All this wood, this is all really expensive and prime oak and basically oak on this rack. There's some poplar and some pine boards and some other stuff. Some of this stuff here, these boards especially, are from pews from St. Gabriel's. In about 1995, St. Gabriel's built a new church, and the old church had 50-year-old pews in it, which they discarded. So I got, I don't remember how many, maybe half a dozen of those pews, and I brought them home and knocked them down, and I ran them through my thickness planer, and I got some absolutely A1 beautiful stuff. Now this stuff here is 70 years old since it was cut anyway. Really, maybe a little more than that. So I've got a really nice stack there, but I haven't used much of that. Behind this plastic is the coffin that I made for Shirley and I. And of course, she's already used it, and it's where I'll be next in its use. And these pictures show the appearance of it on the table when I finished it, and Shirley took a picture of me laying in it. So those boards back there in the corner of the wall are from a folding curtain from the church at Dawson Springs. The old church, before it was remodeled, it had this folding curtain separating the eating area from the sanctuary. Well, when they rebuilt or remodeled it, they discarded that curtain, and they threw it away. So I salvaged the boards, and I've used a few of them. It's probably Philippine mahogany, but it's nice, knot-free stuff. And I thought maybe I'd have a project with it sometime, but it hadn't worked out. This stuff over here is all walnut. Essentially, there's some cherry here that I got when we lived in Michigan. We had a nice cherry tree that died, and I found a guy with a portable bandsaw, and he came out to the house and he cut it up for me. So I've made a number of clocks and stuff out of it. And this other stuff, this walnut, it's from the tornado in Frankfurt in 1974, I believe. Our neighbor in the back had a farm with a lot of trees and stuff on it, and I'd gotten acquainted with him. In fact, I'd given him some wood. He was on a project he was working, and this tornado came through there and knocked down, a number of walnut trees, plus some other stuff back there. But he called me and he said, if you want those walnut trees, come and get them. So I called Frank, Lucille's husband, here in Louisville. He had a Jeep, and we went back in there and we cut them up and skidded them down the highway and through the subdivision to my front yard. And I found a guy with a sawmill to come out and pick them up and saw them up for me. So I had them sawed in various sizes and sections so that there'd be some turning material I could turn in the lathe. And well, I made quite a few things from this pile over here. There's still a lot here, though. There's some nice big chunks of cherry. And anyway, it's all premium stuff. Here's a big old piece right here underneath this bicycle. But there's enough lumber here that you can make quite a bit of stuff out of it. But of course, I'll never use it. I had a section of that cherry tree cut in a big chunk, so I thought I could bandsaw it and make veneer out of it sometime. But anyway, that won't happen. These things here, I've got a number of them hanging over here too. All of these. Those are all patterns and cores to make shapes in wood. In other words, this one and that one especially, and some others, are bending forms. Take the thin pieces of wood and put glue on them, multiple layers, and then I have a large vinyl bag with a vacuum pump. And I pull about 25 inches of vacuum, and it sucks the wood up against this thing, and the wood sets then in that shape. This is a clock, which you probably recognize from hanging in the dining room. Half of the outer shape, I made two pieces on this thing and turned around and joined them together at the top and the bottom there. But anyway, that's what all these are. All bending forms and templates to cut out repetitive shapes with a router. This is a shape to cut out sections for the kneelers that were breaking, so I made a fixture where I could route out what I needed. I made a whole number of them and made a bunch of spares, so when they broke, I'd have something to fix them with. Oh, as you can see, I don't throw much away. All this shelf is full of electrical stuff, all kinds of relays and transformers and whatever. And this is my sprinkler system, spare parts, and all these pieces, airline pressure gauges and regulators and stuff that I've picked up from dismantling or remodeling at the factory or whatever, and plumbing pieces of various sorts. All this stuff comes in handy when you need something. I can usually find something to make it work. And underneath all this pile of junk here is various pieces of metal and steel. It looks like junk, but when I needed a piece of certain size or whatever of steel or aluminum, I can usually find something and machine it down and make it work. So if it's shiny, you don't throw it away, and when it's dull, you keep it. And this shelf here is just, I've got all kinds of bolts and stuff that I've accumulated over the years. I haven't bought a bolt or a screw in a long time. Nails and whatever, brass pieces. So I turn this stuff on the lathe and make all kinds of stuff. I made mostly clock parts out of this stuff. And springs and so forth. This machine here, I was given this machine. This is a lighting head, and you set this thing in a position so that for every revolution this will turn a certain amount. And so if you're cutting gears or something and you want the teeth evenly spaced, that's what you use. And I use this to make the flutes on my clock posts in the front. These long posts with the grooves located properly by this thing here, and routed in each subsequent position. So that's an expensive piece, and it's worth $500 or $600. This is my radial drill that I got from my son-in-law Billy about 30 years ago. He had bought it from a company he worked for, but he didn't want it, so I bought it from him. I'm pretty good use to it. I've had to do some alterations to the bearings on the spindle, but it's been trouble-free. It's a nice machine. And over here, this aluminum thing hanging there is a router fixture in order to cut circles of various diameters. The router mounts here, and pivot point is variable depending on what you need. And this is Dad's old toolbox for his clock repair, or watch repair business that he had back in the 20s. Not really, he just did them for a few dollars, I guess. But I can't work on watches. The stuff's too fine. But some of these old tools here just dates back to the 20s and the teens. These are glass cutters and some specialized watch tools that's a little vise, a little watch vise. I've never used it. I don't like to monkey with it. It's fine stuff. And these are, this is my bag of spare clock hands. There's quite a few of them in there. Of course, I never have the right one, it seems. These are various pieces of clocks and spare keys and old watches from Dad's area. Pieces of watches. And these are clock spring retainers. I use those all the time. And these are bobs, clock bobs, and other parts, pieces. Same here. Various little pieces of junk. And his old eyeglass piece. But anyway, that's 100 years old already. This contraption here I made a few years ago. Tom worked for a company that sorted and assembled screws and parts automatically, and they had a screw a little set screw that they had to orient so that the screw pointed downward so they could drive it rapidly, and they were having trouble separating them. So I came up with this contraption that's mechanically operated, and that was its downfall. It wasn't automated, but anyway, it did. You fed the screw through this little hole here, and as you rotated this arm, it detected whether the screw was in the right direction or not, and then dropped it. It worked. It actually worked pretty good, but too crude for his sophisticated company. It was just fun to do that. And these are clockworks that I bought on eBay. I probably paid an average of $15 for them, and of course they were wrecks when I got them, but I've taken them all apart. This is an example of one here. took it completely apart and looked at every pivot point and rebushed it. You can see the little circles around the hole. Those are new bushings that I put in there and repaired the shafts, a lot of them. It's odd, but most of the time the shaft is what's really worn. You wouldn't think that this hard steel shaft, this little steel rod that goes back from each side here, you wouldn't think that would wear faster than the brass. But what happens is that the brass picks up the dirt and embeds in it, and then as the steel shaft is turning, that piece of dirt acts as a little cutting tool and cuts the steel. So frequently the shaft is terrible, but the bushing can be still reasonably good. But anyway, sometimes the gears were stripped and bent and whatever, but these all run well. That hand's bent there, but a lot of times the springs are broken. But it takes a little time to take all that apart, and clean it up, and repair it, and put it back together. I think there's 4 of them in here in that category. I thought maybe I'd make clock cases for them, but that's not going to happen. I'm not done making clock cases. These are different models and different brands that come from different companies, and they're all made 100 years ago and more. Some 130 years, but they're all at least 100 years old. Yeah, I've got four good ones in here. They're probably worth $100 a piece, something like that, on eBay. And these are clock parts, extra clock parts that I've accumulated. And then some clock dials back here, and a fancy bob. And that little clock, that little house clock back there, you can buy parts for those yet, but that one needs a balance wheel, and it's about $50, and I don't feel inclined to spend $50 on it. But it was my mother's. It came from my mother's parents, and I have one upstairs that actually runs too. And this one would run. It wouldn't be difficult to fix that one, but I just don't want to spend the money on it. And there's various tools of all kinds I've accumulated over the years. Some are real old. This is a real old one. And some are pretty new. And my electrical diagnosis, my Wiggy, and my voltmeter here. And these are taps and dies, metric and US thread die sets. And this is a circular glass cutter. There's a little diamond right here, and the suction cup holds it in place. And as you swing around, you etch the surface of the glass, and it creates a stress riser, and it'll let it snap at the cut. And all these tools. This is a vacuum pump here that I used a few times. I don't know where I got it. Picked it up somewhere. Oh yeah, I know where I got that. Bud Neat bought that for me. Yeah, in 1995. I overhauled his, I think it was a '68 Corvette. I did it was from the bolts up, and I needed a vacuum system to work the vacuum operated windshield wiper cover and several vacuum operated pieces on that Corvette. So he bought me that that vacuum pump, so I could test and adjust that stuff. That was quite a project. I even had to get the speedometer repainted, and well, it was pretty bad. And these are other tools. This is my skill saw and power planer and engraver and buffing wheel, and little pin nailer and soldering gun, and a router in underneath here in that blue container, blue bag. My paint spray guns that I don't use anymore. And a little torch and my nail gun. And this is a smaller router in there, a nice little setup for small work. So it looks like I have about three routers, three hand routers, and this is a big old belt sander here that I use a lot. And my DeWalt, I bought this as a Christmas present to me last Christmas. This one, and an impact gun that goes with it. Now this is the impact, the drill motor too that goes with it. Those two. I need a battery for that. Well, anyway, this is my workbench, which I've described previously. Accumulated over the years. And then this is my spray guns up here. These are Harbor Freight guns, and they're the best guns I've ever used. This only cost $10 for that spray gun, and it sprays better than this $150 50-year-old DeVilbiss that I bought. I paid $150 for this 45 or 50 years ago, and I wouldn't use it again. After I got this, I couldn't believe how much better that worked. Anyway, this is Jebby's picture. He's been dead, gosh, 10 years now already. He was a little pistol. You can see it in his eyes. And there's my Lord there knocking at the door. Anyway, this little contraption here, right here, with a hole in it, is a magnetizer or a demagnetizer. In other words, if you want to magnetize something, you hold the little button down and hold the piece in there, and it'll magnetize it. If you want to demagnetize it, you hold the button down and run it in and out, and it'll kill the magnetization on it. It's clever. I've used it. My son-in-law Bob Coker gave me that a number of years ago. The Chardoffs. The night Jebby died, I took him for a walk. Actually, I carried him, and I stopped at Chardoffs, and they took my picture. And then they made this. The kids made this frame and stuff for me. It's pretty cool. And now here's my sandblaster, which I don't use very often. Anyway, my wood vise I got from Dad. I've used that, well, ever since I can remember. That was in his workshop at home when I was a kid, and I brought it down here in 1957, and when I made this workbench, and so that's I've done a lot of clamping and holding on that thing. It's getting a little ragged up the top end, but that works fine. And these drawers are my drill bits, all kinds of drill bits. Old ones that I got from Dad back there for hand auger, basically, although I've altered them so I can use them on my electric drill, but I don't need to use those very much. All various stuff. These are letter drills. These are wood. No, these are numbered drills, and these are wood drills, and these are steel for steel. And in this box are 4 Forstner bits for wood, make flat bottom holes in wood. That's just sandpaper in there. This is just various miscellaneous stuff. When I don't have a place for something, it goes into this drawer. I made this table out of a tree that I cut on the farm when I was about 14 or so. I don't know what possessed me, but I decided that I had to cut this huge pine tree up in the woods. And I remember cutting through it at the bottom, and it wouldn't fall. It was trapped, the top was trapped by other trees. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't do anything. I just left it. And the next day a wind came up and blew it down. But Dad wasn't very pleased with me. But in any case, he found the guy, or took it to the sawmill and made the boards and stuff out of it. And he made these 2 by 10 or 12s out of them. And they were in the barn then for, I don't know, 10 years maybe, whatever. And one day I was up there and I decided I'd make a perfect workbench, but I only had a 1954 and I lived in Louisville, 500 miles away, so I wasn't going to be able to pay for transportation or anything like that. So I cut them in lengths that I could fit in my trunk. And boy, I had that old Ford really sinking to the ground. But anyway, I got them to Louisville. I got this whole top was made out of the same stuff. Got them down here and put them together and made that workbench. So I've had that workbench for over 70 years. 70? Yeah, no, yeah, 6. Well, let's see, if it was 1960, it'd be over 60 years I've had it. I've done a lot of projects on that bench. Underneath here is a piece of railroad rail. Dad was a telegraph operator, and frequently the rails would break, and the repairman would come with a big bandsaw and cut the rail off and put a new piece in it. And so he got this guy to cut him some pieces. I think 4 of them, and they make a great anvil. I've used that quite a bit to bend things around and so forth. It's got so many different shapes on it that it really makes it a handy piece of steel to have. Not something I use every day, but I've made good use of it over the years.
Inside this room is my air compressor. It's a pretty good size contraption. I used to have my vacuum pump for my dust collecting system in here, but as I mentioned earlier, I gave that to one of my grandsons a year or so ago, so it's not in here anymore. It was a pretty big machine too.
This is Batisse's clock that I made for him and all the other kids, each one about 25 years ago. And during his recent house move, it got dropped, and fortunately it didn't break the expensive convex glass, but I hope it didn't damage the works in the impact. And he wants me to fix it, so maybe I'll fix it. There's a view from outside my shop doors here. This is my backyard. Nice. It's nice around here. A lot of nice trees, a lot of nice neighbors, a lot of bushes and stuff. Nice and quiet. This is Batisse's clock that I made for him and all the other kids, each one about 25 years ago. And during his recent house move, it got dropped, and fortunately it didn't break the expensive convex glass, but I hope it didn't damage the works in the impact. And he wants me to fix it, so maybe I'll fix it. There's a view from outside my shop doors here. This is my backyard. Nice. It's nice around here. A lot of nice trees, a lot of nice neighbors, a lot of bushes and stuff. Nice and quiet.
Well, I think I'll end this one here. It's already way longer than I wanted it to be, but we'll go to the next video.